Hey guys, and welcome back to Iconoclast Brewing, where we believe there is truth in beer. Today we're looking at this device here. This is the Igulu F1 automated brewing appliance. This is a countertop brewing device that is designed to make your brew day as easy as possible. What I'm here to do is to find out, one, does it work and does it deliver on its promises? And two, does it make good beer? So, what am I drinking today? Today we are drinking a Czech Dark Lager, and this is a beer I made for the Virginia Beer Blitz of 2024. It scored very well. We got a 41 out of 50 on this, and it scored so well it actually placed first for Best of Show. If you'd like to learn how to make this, click the link below and I'll take you through it. This beer has quite a bit of malt backbone to it. It is creamy, it has some bitterness that doesn't linger too long, but it cuts right through just enough to balance everything out. It's delightful to drink. Okay, I'd like to share some immediate thoughts that I have about this device. Being a longtime brewer, about 12 years now, and everything from your cooler, your Igulu cooler systems, to stovetop extract, to the G7 you see back there. I've been brewing a long time. Automated brewing has never been something I've done before, especially in such a small batch, let alone extract type of brewing. I am skeptical, but I am also hopeful because we have to give this thing a fair shot. The best way to judge this is how the beer turns out. Now, all the components feel pretty solid to me. I don't feel like anything was made cheaply, so I'm not really worried about that aspect. What I am worried about is the quality of the beer, because that is what I care about most as a brewer. Okay, before we get to the part where we actually get to brew, let's take a look at all the different components that came with the Igulu F1. The first component here is the drip tray, or the drip mat, whatever you want to call it. It does feel really solid. It's super heavy. It seems like it's made from a rubber that is very easy to clean. I wouldn't worry too much about buildup or anything coming from drips from your tap or anything like that. I think you could rinse this with some nice hot water, really not even have to clean it too much, and it would do its job. It also stays in place really well. If I try to move it, it doesn't slide around, which is nice. Next up, we have the tap handle, and this uses a standard ferrule, it looks like. It should fit any of your other taps you might have. It is, once again, another component that is heavy. It feels solid. This thing is kind of fun to toss around. You get to watch me do that right now. But this feels nice to pull, for sure. When you're pouring, it, again, feels solid. I see nothing wrong with this. It seems like a high quality tap handle. Next, we have the fermentation vessel. This vessel also will function as your serving keg. This is, as I said, an all-in-one system, and that means that you're fermenting and serving out of the same container without the need to transfer or anything like that. The first thing I notice about this, it's very hard plastic. So I have a couple plastic fermenters around the house right now, around the brewery, Firmzillas. Namely, they are great fermenters, however, they are not as thick as this, and I don't know if I would trust my Firmzillas as much as I trust this Igulu vessel for a higher pressure fermentation. And definitely understand that fermentation with this system means you might find yourself up around 35, 38 psi at peak of fermentation, which is going to mean that your beer is carbonated very quickly, so you'll be able to serve it by the end of the fermentation cycle, which is great. There's really no waiting for carbonation. However, you do have to worry about the pressure, and that doesn't seem like a problem with this system. And we'll get into the other components that go with this vessel after this that will hopefully make you feel a little better about this system being able to handle that kind of pressure. I would also say that it's important to note this system makes about 10 bottles of beer in one fermentation. So you're not making a ton of beer by any means, and you'll find that this vessel itself can hold about 1 gallon. You'll see later where we actually brew this, we're adding some water, we're adding the malt, and all of that together comes out to about 1 gallon of wort that will be fermented. Now, the next component that we're looking at here is what Igulu refers to as the AS dispensing coupler. Now, this is used for third-party kegs, similar to a Heineken keg. However, the kegs we're talking about here are not exactly the same as a Heineken keg, just similar. So the difference is that a Heineken keg typically contains CO2 gas within the top of the keg itself, whereas these other 5-liter kegs do not. So you would use the spear to install into this type of keg to pressurize with CO2 and dispense. And they do include instructions on how to do this. So you're really just chilling the keg, pulling the red valve out of the keg, inserting the AS dispensing coupler quickly into the keg, placing it in the Igulu, and selecting the options from the Igulu touchscreen for an AS keg. It looks like they want you to select cooling and enter CO2 mode to start refrigeration. Just a really cool little additional component here, and this is not the only type of keg you can serve from. You, like I said, can serve from a Heineken keg, which we'll talk about next, in addition to the Igulu fermentation vessel. As promised, the next component is the Heineken keg dispensing coupler. This is something you could use to connect to a keg you got at the store, a little tiny Heineken keg, and actually serve out of the Igulu F1 with this coupler. There's not really much to that, so we'll move on. We also have this clamp for the lid, which will actually go around the keg lid and seal it to the fermentation tank. This is what I was talking about when I mentioned things that make me feel a little better about this high pressure fermentation. The first time I put this thing on, I was thinking it felt a little loose, and it does wiggle around a bit, but after about a day or two, with all that pressure up around 35 psi, this thing sealed up real nice. I had no leaks, and it did its job really well. Here we have the keg lid and extraction tube. Now, the extraction tube does disconnect from the keg lid itself. If you want to, I would personally when I'm cleaning this thing, which you'll see me do a little bit later. But the idea is this dip tube will extend into the keg and will actually pull the liquid out. So it'll go into the tap from there. There's a nice seal around this. If you check that out, you can see it's a large O-ring, and this creates a really tight seal. Like I said before, I had no issues with leakages or anything like that with gas, CO2 during fermentation. I was around 37 psi, which is a lot of pressure. So this thing can definitely hold its own. On the top, you have a gas connection and a liquid connection. Those I will show you how to connect later after the brew day. And the only other piece of this that you really need to know about is there is a pressure relief valve. It's the orange knob there, and you can pull that if you want to let off some pressure. I don't know if this will let pressure off automatically or not. I don't know if it's really a PRV or almost a spunding type device. I'm not sure. We'll have to check that out. There is another feature worth mentioning here, and that is the air pump and the ability to attach a CO2 tank to this thing. So you can see the bracket on the back here. This is actually fitted for a SodaStream canister, and you have to make sure that you get the threaded version. I guess there is a second version out there, like a quick connect version. That does not work. You need the threaded version for this. You can just pick those up pretty much anywhere, like Target or Walmart, wherever, and that's great. The other part of this is that there is a air pump built in, a compressor. And this compressor can be used in place of CO2. However, it's recommended by myself for sure, but also Igulu, that you do not use this for any beverage you don't plan on finishing that day, because you might find that you oxidize the beverage, which makes total sense. All right, I did mention the lights on the front here. This light is an indicator to the status. White, which you can see it's in right now, is standby. It's not really doing anything. It doesn't have a recipe inputted. It's not actively fermenting anything. It's not dispensing, etc. If it is orange, it is fermenting. So this will be orange for the duration of your fermentation schedule up until the time it starts cold crashing, from what I understand. At which point it turns green. Green does mean cooling. It means that the refrigeration unit has turned on, is chilling that beer. Whether this turns green periodically throughout the fermentation cycle, I don't know. I'm expecting to see it turn green at the end of the fermentation cycle, when we are beginning to cold crash, or to drop that temperature so we can clear the beer out a little bit, actually get it to wash off. I didn't like that. I switched to alkaline, and it works well with cold water, super easy to use. It just cleans better in my opinion. So I've already cleaned this, the fermentation vessel. It's good to go. I've rinsed it out afterwards, of course, and I've cleaned all my components here. So the next thing you want to do is definitely sanitize. And I highly recommend getting a spray bottle, just like this, a 32-ounce bottle. And you're going to want to mix about 1.5 milliliters of Star San to 32 ounces of distilled or reverse osmosis water. That should keep it acidic for a lot longer, so you don't have to keep replacing it. So let's start by doing that. We'll just spray the inside out. And I usually go a little overboard because I figure that's better than not enough. You really have nothing to lose except for, I suppose, a few cents in Star San. We'll just let that sit just for a moment so I can sanitize. I'm also going to sanitize my dip tube. So I'm going to spray right through like this. And I have no problem putting it on the floor because I'm in my garage. I can just spray it out. That is good to go, and we'll sanitize the outside when we're about done there. I'll also sanitize the inside of the lid. Same deal as before, just dump it out. And then I'm gonna connect everything up. The dip tube snaps right in to the bottom of the lid, super easy. And we'll just leave this aside so we can sanitize that dip tube on the outside after when we're ready. For now, I'm going to spray some Star San through my liquid line. Let it get nice and foamy in there. Okay, I feel good about that. Okay, that's really about it for getting ready. Let's go ahead and, like I said, we're gonna brew the pale ale today. I'm really excited to see how that comes out. Let's put this one aside and open this one up and see what's in here. All right, I can't get this open. My hands are too wet. Okay, hang on, I'm gonna get some scissors. All right, I got my scissors. My hands are a little wet from the Star San. That didn't work out too well. Okay, what do we have? We have some dry malt extract. Looks like it's Breeze, which I think most people are familiar with. It's really nothing special about Breeze, but it is reliable and you can find it pretty much everywhere. This is just pale ale dry malt extract. So it should be a lighter color, I am assuming, which makes sense for a pale ale. We'll put that aside. We have some priming sugar in here. 1, 2, we have 3 packs of this. So it looks like about 3 ounces. And no doubt that's to help dry out the beer, maybe boost the alcohol a little bit. We have a couple different hop extracts going on here. We have what is called a natural hops extract 25, whatever that means. This says ingredients, water, and hop extracts. No idea what kind of hop this is. I would assume this is just for bitterness, nothing else. And it looks like we have another one here, which is actually Mosaic. It says right on it. So I think I like Mosaic a lot. I'm really excited to see how this smells when I open it. And we have one more down the bottom here. This is another Mosaic. It's like we're using 2 Mosaic packs and 1 bitter extract 25. Again, whatever that is. Last but not least, we have 2 things. We have our yeast, which is, this is not as much yeast as I'd normally use. This is 0.07 ounces, a super small packet. It is definitely sized for a 1-gallon batch. Okay, and I would assume this is something like SO5, if you're familiar with that, just a pretty standard, clean American sort of yeast. And then, of course, we have the RFID that I talked about. This is, I think, one of the coolest parts of this machine. You can just take this sticker, scan it on the side. I don't want to do it yet because we're not quite ready for that, but I'll show you that in a few minutes when we get ready to go. Okay, and okay, the first step that they call out in the back here is to prepare a clean keg and add purified water up to the 116 ounce mark, which is right at the bottom of the sticker here. I used RO, or reverse osmosis water. That is what I have, but I would actually recommend using spring water because you're gonna get some of those minerals in there that will help accent your flavors, like malt and bitterness and dryness, those things that you really care about in a beer. So I'm sure mine will turn out great, but if you want better results, I would say use natural spring water. So I sanitized this, as you remember, filled it up with water, and now we are ready to add our hop extract. I've already sanitized these scissors. And we're just gonna clip off the top like that. And this feels really weird adding things this way. If you've brewed before, you're probably thinking, why wouldn't you add the malt first? And to be honest, I don't know, but I'm just following the instructions as they call them out here to see how their process works. So, wow, that's a weird color. It's kind of dark. It looks like a hop shot if you've ever used one of those to add a ton of bittering to something like a double or triple IPA. Reminds me of that. So let's see, we got one more mosaic here. Let's get that in there. Yeah, it's just super dark. Ooh, and don't taste this stuff, whatever you do. It is not, I would not call it edible. Nothing bad would happen, I don't think, but don't take my word for that. It just tastes terrible. So let's see. All right, that one's in there. Now let's do the last. This is the unknown hop, the number 25, as they call it. I can definitely smell mosaic right now. It's very fruity. Oh, this one looks a little different. This is more clear, I would say, but once it goes into the water, it almost looks milky. It's really strange. Okay, that's our hops. Next, and again, it feels weird, but we're gonna add our yeast now, not after we add our fermentables. Let's do that. I'm just gonna spray this thing with some sanitizer, just to be safe. Okay. So let's sprinkle that yeast right on top, like that. Okay, that's in there. This is definitely the easiest brew day I've ever had. We're about 5 minutes in, if that, and we're already almost done. So let's see, next we want to add the malt extract, and I'm assuming the sugar as well. Since that's a fermentable, we'll just add them together. All right. Oh, that yeast looks really cool the way it's falling down. Okay, all right. Looks really neat. Looks almost like snow or something. All right. Oh, this feels weird. Yeah, be careful with this stuff. It can go everywhere. You really want a controlled pour. It does have a tendency to just kind of float all over your brewery somehow, so. All right, you can see that color changing already. So I didn't mention it before, this is a no boil system. There is no boil whatsoever. We are just mixing everything together and letting it ferment. Which again feels strange if you've brewed before. But we will see how it turns out. That's really what matters here. How is the beer? Let's add our sugar next. I think they're considering that part of the malt extract step. They don't mention sugar in particular, but I'm making an assumption. Actually, that's 1 ounce. And add another one. All right. Okay, let's add the last one. And we're done. So another weird thing, you don't mix this. After you're done here with that last step, you do not mix it, you just put the top on. It says seal the tank, and then we're gonna place it in the machine and connect the beer and gas tubes, which I'll show you how to do. Like I said, first let's take this and spray it down. We haven't really sanitized the outside of this tube yet. I would say that's good. Let's hit the bottom of that lid one more time. Okay, and then we're gonna take this thing and we're just gonna drop it right on top. Push it down. Now, as mentioned, this is a pressure unit. It's gonna ferment under pressure. That is why we have this device here to secure the lid. Which the last time I used it, I was a little worried about how loose it fit, but that was not a concern. After I hit about 30 PSI, this thing was tight. I would not worry about that. Okay, we've just brewed a beer. That's crazy. At this point, we're gonna drop it right into the Igulu F1. Doesn't really matter on orientation. Just make sure there's nothing surprising in there that I'm gonna drop this on. Looks good. All right, so that is installed. So up here we have this is a CO2 line, this is a gas line. We are supposed to install all of these now, both the liquid and the gas, but you just push it on. Pretty easy to do. Now, let's see. I did mention earlier that there is a bit of a counterintuitive process if you're used to installing taps or anything like that. This is not what you've experienced before. There is no shank, there's no disconnects. In this case, there's a push fitting, and you also have this here. You're gonna lift this on top of the tap itself. You're gonna lift this metal piece off. You're actually gonna push the tap forward, and you're gonna push the tubing all the way in until it won't go in anymore, and then let the tap come back. Finally, we're gonna actually secure the quick fitting here and just push it down, same as before. This is the white piece I was speaking about earlier, where if you want to limit the amount of foam, if you're getting a lot of foam, you can use this clip to pinch the tube a little bit. It should help because it changes the inner diameter of the tube. So if you're having those foaming issues, try messing around with that clip. See how that goes. Should resolve it. Okay, this is all connected at this point. We're good to go. We're just gonna reinstall this metal piece. Fits right on, looks great. And we're gonna install the lid. And I think this is probably the most fun part here. This is where you actually get to scan the tag. So let's try that. All right, so we're gonna scan it right there. You can see it comes up right up top here. On the screen, it says pale ale. It actually knows what we're brewing. You just hit next, if I can tap it. And it shows you the fermentation schedule. It says it's gonna do 1 day at 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 64 degrees for 2 days, 68 degrees for 3, and then it's gonna crash down to 35 for 3 days. For a total of 9 days, we should have a finished beer. Okay, it just turned orange like we talked about. That means it's fermenting. And I just heard it kick on. It sounds kind of like a kegerator, a keezer, or something like that running. It's not terribly loud, but you can hear it cooling. There's a compressor running in there. So that is a great sign. That means we are well underway. Thank you for watching, guys. This was actually my first ever video, but really means a lot that you stopped by to check out Iconoclast. A huge thanks to Igulu for giving us the chance to play around and have some fun with the F1. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you want to see how this beer turns out in the follow-up video. That should be up in about a week. If you want to show support in other ways, you can visit iconoclastbrewing.com to check out blog articles or just buy us a coffee. See you in the next one, and never stop brewing.